Welcome to the podcast Konmoto. My name is Christina Petersen. I'm a Feldenkrais practitioner and based in northern Germany in Lübeck. And I do regularly some talks with colleagues of mine. And today I'm very happy to talk to someone from the US. And also, she is a musician and she works with musicians. And also, my background is the music and playing piano and teaching to play the piano. And so I'm very happy to have Rachel as a guest. Hello, Rachel.
Hello, Christina.
Where are
Good.
you at the moment? Exactly.
Oh, I am in California. I'm just north of LA, about 90 miles or so. I'm in a tiny little town called Carpinteria. It's just south of Santa Barbara.
Oh, sounds good. The beach
Yeah.
is near.
It's like a 10-minute bike ride. Yeah.
Oh, it's like for me. I also have 10, no, not 10 minutes by car, not by bike. And
It's an
yeah,
electric bike. So
so I told the people something about your background, and can you say or explain us a little bit where are you at the moment? What are you doing? What are your degrees? Or yes, your instrument and
Yeah, so I have degrees in viola performance, bachelor's, master's, and doctoral degree in viola performance. That's been my main focus for most of my life is music. But then once I finished my doctorate, I was burned out on academia. I had been struggling with playing related injuries for 15 years since I was a teenager. And I was pretty fed up with that. And kind of, I wouldn't say I gave up on academia, but I just decided to try a little different route. And so I dove into fitness and CrossFit and strength training. And so I went and I got a level 1 CrossFit certification and then a level 2 CrossFit certification and foundation training certifications and USAW and or USA Weightlifting. Um, just accumulating knowledge in a different field, it felt like. And then that led me, because I love strength training, it's great. It was helping kind of keep my pain, my injuries manageable, but it wasn't feeling like it was healing. And that led me to go into the Feldenkrais method, go into a training. Um, and so, yeah, I finished my training a couple years ago and I was kind of getting the ball rolling on my practice, and then a pandemic hit. So,
yes, but we leave it to the side for the moment, the
yeah.
pandemic. We go back to times without. And
Mhm.
so, as I understood, first was the music and the instrument, and then there was um, the strength training,
Mhm.
yes, CrossFit,
Mhm.
and later the Feldenkrais method.
Yeah.
And do you know who was the first person who spoke to you about the Feldenkrais method, or you read something? So, what was your really first contact with the Feldenkrais method?
Yeah, so I have to say that all of those things, it's easy for me to sit here and say I did this and then I did this and then I did this, but actually they're all very tangled together in my life. I just feel like it takes too long to really like unravel all the pieces of when I did one thing. But I can clearly tell you, Feldenkrais, my first experience in the Feldenkrais method was actually when I was 18 at a music festival. Yuri Vardy, who's a cellist, and he had just finished his Feldenkrais certification, his training, and he was the cello teacher at this festival in Massachusetts, I think it was. And I was there for the summer, and he was offering ATM classes and then also FI. And I only remember one ATM, though I think he taught more. I think I attended more, but I remember he taught the pelvic clock.
Oh, can I spring in? Can I spring in? Can you
Yeah.
tell just a little bit what is an ATM?
Yes.
and an FI in short words, and
Of
then
course.
and follow with the
Yes, yes. So, like, most basic ATM is awareness through movement. It's the Feldenkrais group classes. And then FI, functional integration. It's more the one-on-one with a practitioner, you yourself. I like to describe them as kind of the two sides of this, the same coin in the Feldenkrais method. They both draw from the same inspiration or the same source material, but it's just a little bit different means of teaching. So ATM being more verbal, and FI being mostly hands-on, but also verbal in its own way too.
wonderful. So your first was something with the pelvic clock in, yeah, please.
Yeah, so one of the most quintessential Feldenkrais lessons, this pelvic clock lesson, where you're imagining your pelvis lying resting on a clock face if you're lying on your back on the floor, and you're just imagining that your pelvis can move in this way around the clock. And the way he taught it in the festival that I was attending, it was linking that movement actually with the movement of your head, your skull lying on the floor, and feeling that your skull can move with your pelvis, and so that there's this connection, really feeling that connection from your skull all the way through your spine to your pelvis. And I remember being 18 and thinking, this is so cool. What's for lunch? So it stuck with me, which I always felt like was pretty amazing, to be an 18-year-old, like full of hormones and running around, doing crazy things at a summer festival. And the fact that that lesson still stuck with me through all of that was quite impressionable. Um,
Do you know today, just a little bit older, what what was it? What stuck with you, or what made you later on to remember? Oh, there was a Feldenkrais method. Maybe I should look in this door, open this door.
well, there was something really magical about it, where because before that time I was a dancer. So I studied ballet for 9, 10 years as a youngster, and that I ended up having to leave ballet for an injury as well, and never really feeling satisfied and like not really having a lot of closure, because that injury still came back from time to time for many years. um, but there was just something really interesting about the way that the lesson had you move yourself, your body, that I thought, I'm a dancer, I can move really well. Everybody tells me I move really well, but then here's this lesson that's just so freaking simple, and yet it's had this really profound effect on my brain. It's just, there was something so interesting about it that it just piqued my curiosity, I think, and that just lasted for a really long time.
And what came next? Came next the one-to-one lesson, or yeah.
Well, I think I had at least one FI, functional integration, with him. And it was with my instrument. He had me playing, and he had me doing these weird things with my eyes and like going contrary to my bow. And I had no idea what was happening. It was like the most confusing thing. And it was just kind of like, oh, okay. Um, and after that summer, I didn't really think about Feldenkrais again until probably like 10 years later, when I was finishing. Well, my mother was actually starting to see a Feldenkrais practitioner for her own issues with pain. And then my mother had decided that she wanted to enter a training, and I was just finishing up my doctorate. I was looking for something else to do, and it just seemed like this is the thing. Like, hey, this could be really cool. So give it a shot.
Ah, wonderful. Yes. So, and in between there was the CrossFit thing
Mhm.
also. Yes. And you you and with 28 you went directly to a training, or you entered before into some group lessons, or you.
I basically just went into the training. It was, you know, It's kind of crazy to think back on it now. It's like I hadn't had a huge amount of experience. I remembered really liking it, and it was kind of like, okay, well, I'll go for a segment and see, like, this is a big commitment, 4 years. Let's try a segment and see what happens. And in the first segment, it was like I was hooked. It was everything that I felt like I had been looking for a very, very long time. Like, even with um, learning about strength training and fitness and all those separate modalities, there had been these things that I was just looking for and I wasn't finding in that world. And so coming into Feldenkrais, all of a sudden it was like, oh, like, this is, how would you say, it was kind of filling some niches that I felt like I needed to be filled. Giving me freedom to move and not judge myself and just be able to sit back and observe. Like, that just, it was so liberating.
Yeah, I so totally understand what you mean. So I'm also a Feldenkrais enthusiast, and it's really that I felt when I came in contact with the Feldenkrais method. Yes, that's made for me. It's the part I miss. What? I can go on for half an hour to stumbling about how cool Feldenkrais is. so, but um, so you went to the training, and which idea were in your mind? What you want to achieve, or what you want to learn, or why did you do the training? And was it the same at the end, or how
Mhm.
this develops throughout all the 4 years? So it's
Yeah.
the process. We are talking a lot about process in the Feldenkrais method. And if you
Yeah.
think about from the beginning, what was in your mind, and then at the end, and yes, this is, I think it's a very interesting box we can open.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because you're helping me actually connect some dots that I'd never really connected before. Because after I finished my bachelor's in music, which I had already, like, during my bachelor's, I actually ended up taking a year off from playing. Oh, sorry. I'm supposed to not be getting notifications right now. Apparently didn't check the right box. Um, so I had taken a year off in the middle of my bachelor's degree, which, it's a 4-year degree. So taking a year off from playing your instrument in the middle of a music degree is a pretty big deal. Like, having to do special petitions to get out of certain concerts and requirements and certain things like that, to still be able to graduate. But after I finished that degree, I was really fed up because I'd seen all these medical practitioners. Like, I'd seen doctors, like general physicians and specialists, and I'd even gone to acupuncturists and chiropractors, and I'd seen a bunch of different kinds of people. I was getting massages, I was swimming, I was doing yoga, I was doing Pilates, like, I was doing all the things to try and help with these repetitive stress injuries that I was experiencing. And I was just finding that nothing was really helping to relieve that pain. And I knew on some kind of base level that if I learned how to move my body better, if I learned how to use myself better, then I would experience less pain. And so at that point, and it's interesting to me because I'd never really associated that I'd had this experience with Feldenkrais like 4 or 5 years before. And that must be at least a root of where that idea came from. That if I could learn to use myself better, then I would experience less pain. But I didn't quite know how to translate that because I don't think I really knew exactly what I was feeling. Um, but at the time, after finishing my bachelor's, I went to get a personal training certification. So I took the classes at the community college and did the course, and I did the test and all that stuff. And so I got that certification, and I kept it up for a couple of years. Um, and so I think I was thinking that if I was just stronger, then I would be able to lift this heavy instrument that I was playing, and I would have better endurance and all that jazz. My stamina would be better. But it didn't quite pan out. Like I said earlier, it was like things were just manageable, because at that point, then I went into CrossFit and I was trying to do more with strength training. And so the injuries were just manageable and I needed something else. Like there was still this kind of mindset that the strength training wasn't even helping with. Because I think that's really what it boils down to, is it wasn't necessarily how I was using my body, but it was how I was thinking about it. And CrossFit, strength training, those things are great, but there's still this really competitive nature to it all, that I think also like I clung to, because we have that kind of competitive nature in the music world as well. So anyway, that at a certain point after finishing my doctorate, it was like, I need something else. And then my mother going into Feldenkrais, making me remember, remember having this experience when I was a teenager, and going, you know what, I bet that might give me some of the answers that I'm looking for. So then going through the whole 4-year training, it was, the training was an interesting experience. Our training was toxic in a lot of ways. There were some personalities in the training that made it difficult, to put it nicely. But I still came out on the other side, having learned a new way of being and kind of a new way of thinking that has really helped propel me down this path.
Wonderful. And you were talking about injuries caused by your music practice. So I'm interested at the moment in, do you have any example that you can share with us? Maybe shoulder and this was my process and I found out this. So yeah.
Yeah, well, and playing related injuries, that's what kind of what we call it right now. I think it's a little tricky, because at this point I recognize that it's not exactly the instrument causing the pain. This is a little, it gets a little funky, trying to explain that to people, because all they know is that when they play for 5 hours, their shoulder hurts, or whatever. And I think there's a relation, there's a correlation there. It's not necessarily that the instrument is causing the pain itself, because there are all these levels of pushing through the pain, like learning to push through the pain, learning to ignore our basic needs. And that's also coming from playing in orchestras or having to play in certain situations where you just really can't, you don't feel like you are able to take a break when you need to take a break. If that makes any sense.
I think you wrote me something before, and I think we are here in the theme of thinking about what does it do to me when I'm practicing with goal um, interested,
Goal oriented. Yeah.
goal
Yeah.
oriented, or only like doing something and this makes me happy without any thing I want to achieve with this.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and there's a real balance that you have to learn to cultivate. And I think you're always going to be learning better how to cultivate that kind of balance. It's not an off and on kind of like, hey, I'm doing it today. And then, the next day I'm not doing it. Because it's okay to have goals, but the goals of your practice can't be the end all be all of your practice. Like if your practice of your instrument, or even whatever you're doing, if it's, working out in a gym or, anything really, if the goal is the actual driving force behind why you're practicing, then your practice is never going to fulfill the need of the goal, if that makes sense.
Yes. And I think that happens also to me when I have these talks. I think what a lot of times happens to musicians, but also for all people. There's a theme of doing, 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 doing until you are like, you have to stop because you are ill.
Yes.
Yes. And
Yeah.
if you are not like doing it in a way which is overwhelming for yourself. So there is only the mindset to say, yes, this is work. So it has to be that this certain instrument has these certain um, difficulties, and the people will have pain in the shoulder or in the neck or the lips or whatever. And there's only like black and white. But you can be goal oriented, but changing the style of reaching the goal.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a
And
nice
that,
way to put it.
I think that's this. And there's not the only possibility to do. And when you are exhausted or you have pain, you stop. And this is
Mhm.
a sign of good doing. No,
Yes.
it isn't. Because you can't do anymore. I know some people, they had to quit their dance career, music career, or couldn't um, perform for years because of pain or it was too stressful. And I think there's all around this, why not looking for another organization behind it?
Mhm.
Because I know, and you know, as a musician, there is something you have to do it, and you also commit to this, that you are sitting there alone and doing this and producing the sound, and this is something, this is you. But what you are doing in all the time is also key, and how you are doing this.
Yes. Yeah, because I think that when we get too obsessive over the goals we're trying to reach, we it's very easy to put our own comfort aside. And then we're fed this line by at least American culture where you have to get outside of your comfort zone. In order to grow, the only growth that happens is getting outside of your comfort. And so that, and I even saw somebody the other day on Instagram that was actually saying that your comfort zone was your danger zone because there was no growth that happens in your comfort zone. Uh, but then we're finding that people are in pain more and more often, and then you also have musicians who are finding that they're not able to express themselves as capably in their music as they want to. And I think it all comes back to being over gripping on the goals. It's like I like to equate it to like um holding jello. Like if you're trying to hold jello, the tighter you squeeze the jello, the more it's just going to slip through your fingers. But
Nice
if you
picture.
can, yeah, if you can, learn to cradle it and compensate for where it is in your hands and just be gentle, then you can hold the jello. I don't know why you want to hold jello, but hey.
So you would say that how you practice is different than before your Feldenkrais training.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
And
And even actually after having watched my son grow up. So my son was born halfway through my training. And so that's been an interesting thing too, is having the first 2 years of my training, then having my son, and then getting to watch him develop at the same time I'm finishing my training and seeing how he learns. Just the other day, a few weeks ago, we went to this playground. It was a new playground for him, and there was this crazy like Indiana Jones kind of looking bridge that he wanted to try. And so he took a couple steps, and he's only 4. He's pretty little. And he took a couple steps on it, and it's real wobbly, unstable. And he was like, "Nope, I'm not doing it." And so I lifted him down, and he ran off and he went to do something else. It was no big deal. And then just like 2-3 days later, mind you, he hasn't practiced this thing. 2-3 days later, he goes back to that playground and is able to do the bridge without practice. And I think that there really is something to honoring your own feelings and your own thinking, that like the more we try and push ourselves to do these things, the harder we're actually making it for ourselves.
So my last question was looking for like an example. Before I did this and now I do this. But I think you are talking about the mindset behind how I'm doing. So it's not so much the old practice style or how you learned to
Mhm.
play isn't so much the wrong way, or there are much better ways when you are doing Feldenkrais. The most important thing is that your mindset changes while you are doing all these techniques we
Yeah.
have to practice.
Yes. Yeah. And you said it, like the techniques themselves are not a problem necessarily, but if you're coming about it from a way of I have to practice 8 hours a day. I mean, I practiced when I was, like in college, whatnot, I was practicing 8 hours a day. Like I was, whenever 15 minutes I had, I was just like, okay, I'm in the practice room, I'm wood shopping, and and it was that kind of just obsessiveness. And I'm sure I'm using the techniques to, play faster. I'm using my metronome. I'm doing the things that you're recommended to do to learn a piece of music. I'm practicing my scales and my double stops and my arpeggios, uh, and those are fine. It's just this kind of binary mindset behind it all that was the cause of the problem, not the instrument itself or not the technique necessarily. Because I have rebuilt my technique many times, thinking that that's going to solve some kind of problem with my pain. And that never really fleshed out. I mean, I bought a new instrument. I bought new bows. I had all kinds of shoulder rests and, whatever ergonomic fanciness was on the market. I had softer strings, like a lower bridge, all the things. I had the neck shaved down on my instrument to try and make it smaller. Like it's the mindset. Exactly. You nailed it on the head.
Yeah. But now I'm asking again, do you have an example? Or how does it affect you to practice with another mindset? So for me, I can say it's in general, I think it's my state of tension in each muscle.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And how I am able to connect what I'm doing with my fingers with my whole self. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm not so focused on my fingertips,
Yes.
but to find strength and connectivity to the bigger muscles and to play. Not to be so focused on pressing the right key at the right time
Mm-hmm.
and the right um, strength, but with the connectivity to myself each time. And
Yeah.
also, this is more based in myself and more stable in a situation when I be on stage. So I struggled a long time with being playing for other people. So it's a big deal for me. So, but I think this doubled my um, my personality or how I am organized. That I'm the muscle tension,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's not fluently or what speaks to you what I say to you.
Yeah. Yeah. No, there are a few things. Well, for one, I feel that I approach my practice now from a place of observing rather than every little mistake you make in the practice room going, oh God, that was terrible. Like, why am I even doing this? Or insert whatever like self insult you can come up with. But coming from a place where if you can, there was a scientist, Heisenberg, I can't remember his first name, sorry, I apologize. But he did a lot of work at the atomic level, and he had come up with this, I think what they call the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. So that, and the idea of it is that when you're working on the atomic level, just observing an atom changes it. So you can only know the position or how fast something is going. You can't know both at the same time, because by measuring one, you've changed the other. And this is a frustration in science. But to me, I think it's super cool, because I think about myself. I think about observing myself. The fact that I can observe something means that I can change it. Just the fact that you observe it changes it. So looking at my practice from the perspective of, okay, what am I observing? What do I like about what's happening? What do I don't like about what's happening? But not taking it personally that I'm doing something that's wrong, quote unquote wrong, or something that I don't find pleasurable in my playing. Let's observe it and let's see what that observation can shed light on, as opposed to just judging it. And with judgment comes bias. And when you're biased, it's very, very hard to change directions at that point. You just kind of dig yourself deeper down into the direction you don't like being anyway. So there's that idea. Then, it's interesting that I don't really warm up anymore, especially in the same way that I did before. So before I was in my training program, I would spend probably like half an hour to an hour warming up my body and doing mobilizing with a foam roller and a lacrosse ball, and like drilling into muscles, and like, it stretches and maybe a little bit of yoga and all this stuff. And there was always a heating pad. I always had to have a heating pad first on my shoulder to, like, get it loosened up before I even did anything to it. And then I would go and I would work through these particular kinds of technical exercises on the instrument itself. So I'd spend probably, like a good hour and a half to 2 hours a day just warming up. And that's exhausting. And then you have to go practice your actual repertoire, right? So at this point, I don't warm up. I hate to say it, I don't warm up at all, because I actually, and maybe it's the benefit of going through a training program and learning kind of this art of functional integration, having your hands on a person and moving with them, but just that connection into your hands. And kind of like what you're saying, that, like where is the work happening in my muscles, and what is that connection to myself? I find that I warm up just by doing that and thinking in that way. So in the same way that I might sit down to work with a person on the table and moving them around and trying to engage with them and show them new options to move, and finding that makes my hands super warm. I get the same kind of affect from as playing my instrument, and thinking in that same way, and engaging with my instrument and engaging with myself in that similar way, to where like my hands just warm up on their own. I feel warm after just 5 minutes of kind of messing around.
So for me, we have two very clear pillars of the
Pillars.
pillars. Yeah, sorry.
I like pillows.
I knew
That works for me.
right.
They're soft. I'm sleepy.
Yeah, no.
Sounds lovely.
I don't repeat, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
The thing is, we have the goal-oriented isn't maybe not so good while you are practicing. The second is not judging
Yes.
yourself is the second, and the third one isn't. I think maybe is imagination or preparation without doing, but only in the mind. So when you did this a long time with the like massage your muscles and what you did, then it's so good learned you can do it in your mind only, or better if you do it together with someone, if you're having the hands-on works. So I can say I was a little bit cut from my regular practice with the FI work, with the one-to-one work, and really I missed it in my self-perception, and also I needed to find other ways than only drinking a nice Aperol spritz. to find me, or
Mhm.
yeah, as a Feldenkrais practitioner, we don't like to say relaxation, but like awakening all of myself, and also to communicate with my muscle tones.
Mhm.
And but when you are going to a training, you will be so good trained in not warming up, isn't the right word. You need to be aware of yourself, and then you can start playing from each stage. And in this moment, you will feel, okay, maybe I can go these things up and down, but maybe I stop here because yes, the muscles need a little bit more time to know that they should go no there.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
then by time you feel this, and then everything is okay. But it's at the beginning you start to think about it. Where are my muscles? You don't have to be angry with them.
Right. They're your muscles.
They are yours, and they their tone is guided by your nervous system.
Yes.
That's the key.
Yes. And I think that on a deeper level too, it comes to self-trust. Because I know for myself, a lot of the practice that I did was coming from a place of not trusting that I could take a break from practicing for, a few hours or days or weeks or even months, like taking a break from the instrument. Oh my God, I might forget something. Like I'm going to lose my chops, or however you want to put it. I'm going to lose some kind of learning that I've had. And it's an interesting thing now, especially with the pandemic. Like I haven't been playing. Like I really haven't been playing much at all. It's been, difficult managing a kid, and like just there have been no gigs to play. So it's, like let's just take a break. And coming back to playing the instrument and not really feeling like I've lost much,
Yeah.
that like that it's there. All that learning is still in my brain. It's in my nervous system. Like the instrument is mapped there. And maybe there can be some finesse and some honing of particular like little things, but playing the instrument, it's in myself. It's hard to lose it, really.
And not to forget that you have all this wired in very deep. So
Hmm.
you did your work. And the other thing is you do something else between this. It's not that you are lying in a vacuum and nothing doing with yourself, or maybe not thinking or hearing music, or um, I forgot the name, but I think she is a swimmer from the US, and she made it that she was in her 30s, and she went the third time, I think, to the Olympics. And or by an age when normally no one will go or will be able to be so good in their practice to go to this. And
Hmm.
her trick is that she did it, and then she quit my maybe
Hmm.
for a year not to swim.
Yeah.
But she said, so I read it, and as a Feldenkrais practitioner, I was soaking it uh, from these lines, that she said, yes, of course, I played tennis, and really I was in a high level, and then I was there, but I let it go, and swimming is my first love. And she was in, I think she was also triathlon, and these all things that she did a lot. So she did sport, but
Hmm.
not especially swimming.
Hmm.
And only what she had to do was a certain time before she got into the swimming competitive things to get her mm, permission to go to the Olympics or to be elected to be in the team,
Hmm.
she then was in the water only. But
Hmm.
she never quit sport.
Hmm.
And this is so interesting. Also, she said something from yoga. And so she did everything. She was interested in movement, but not only maybe in this. And this is a sign for, yes, you can practice without practicing.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. So where do I start? Because there's so many cool things to say about that. Like in music, but we also see this in sports. People they seem to think that the only way they can improve is to be doing things that directly relate to their whatever, their instrument or their sport or anything like that. Like there's this idea that even in the world of athletics where we have cross training, and kind of like what the swimmer you're talking about, like the cross training in the off season, maybe they lift weights if they're a football player, or they do something like that where they're supposed to be doing something different, so to kind of counterbalance their sport. But much of the time that cross training anymore tends to be honing the skills that they need for their sport. Or we can cross training is starting to become a thing in the music world, like, oh yeah, okay, well, if I want to be able to hold up my instrument for this long, then I've got to do these shoulder exercises. So you're not really getting away from the movement patterns that that you're supposed to be counterbalancing, right? Yeah. And I read this book recently, Stephen Jay Gould, and I think it was called After Darwin. I think that was the name of the book. He's a naturalist, and he's written a bunch of, or he's passed away now, but he is a natural, or he was a natural history professor, and so these books are all about natural history, dinosaurs and what animals and whatnot, and it's super fascinating. He's an amazing writer, but just in the preface of this book, he was talking about natural selection and how we have this kind of misinterpretation of what natural selection is, because we think of it as being survival of the fittest. Like, in order to survive, you must be the strongest. And he's making this counter argument that actually, no, in order to be able to survive, you have to be the most creative. So natural selection has the way he described it is it has these constraints of that. One, you have to be, in order for a species to survive, it's always making these kind of micro adaptations in just random directions, so that depending on what the environment is doing, some part of this species will be able to keep going. And so then there's always just these micro adaptations happening. And so that's the first constraint. And then the second constraint is that they're actually micro, like they're small steps. You can't see that, oh, you know what, I need to do this thing, so I'm just going to make this big leap to that step right there and expect to be able to survive. Because what if the environment changes in another way? You can't really predict how the environment's going to change. So you have to be creative and you make small steps. And so I see this as really pertaining to what we do in the music world, in the fitness world, where we really just get so goal oriented on having to just push to do the thing and meet the goal, and that's it. Because I think behind it all, there's really just this fear of failure that is driving us. And like I said, it's a binary thinking. It's like, we're either going to fail or we're going to succeed. And if we're not succeeding, we're failing. And even if we do succeed, that means failure might just be around the corner. And so learning to understand that failure is just information is really, like, I think the direction that is very helpful to take people.
Yes. And mm, mm, I have an example, maybe, which is not related to music, but I did
Okay.
some years ago. I didn't, yes, it's, to explain it in English, it's like an exam you go to. It's from the state that we call it Naturopath, Heilpraktiker here in Germany. And I had to learn a lot in these days about medicine and stuff. And what I found out, the structure of all the information I have to uh, be able to give or to learn and to have in my mind, uh, to get the paper that I'm a naturopath, there was a lot of what to do when this, what do you have to check? So it was in rows. And
Mm.
this time, my idea, because I'm a Feldenkrais practitioner, maybe, I was knitting a lot.
Ooh.
And so, yes, I learned a lot and my practice and children and everything. And I thought, what could I do to be, to empty my mind, but doing something what will help me during knitting to bring it in a row. I have to confess, really, I was knitting like it was a scarf only, uh, very easy.
Rose. Just rose. Yeah,
I
yeah,
wanted not to look to patterns and
yeah.
something very um, heavy. What I can do, but I couldn't in this. So it was bringing me down. I heard music or watched TV while this, and I was knitting, and really. It went well. Yes. So I learned a lot, of course. You have to learn
Mhm.
because it's not like falling from the heaven, the
Yep.
what you need to know, but that I could manage it beside all what I was doing also in this, or family, or maybe sometimes meet friends.
Mhm.
And yes, and this, but it was so interesting that sometimes, of course, when I was there knitting, my ideas flow around, and then there appears a little bit of what do you do if someone comes to you when and he says he has headache, and then you have to ask certain things and
Mhm.
to be secure it's not something severe and you can deal with this.
Mhm.
It was very, very interesting. It worked for me. It worked very well.
Yeah, I love it. That's lovely.
So I
Yeah.
think that's the thing, you do something which is maybe not obvious related, but by all things we do, I think with the CrossFit, there's some meaning behind it. You need strong muscle to hold a heavy instrument. But
Mhm.
the base of all is the nervous system.
Mhm.
And this, if you have a muscle which is big and strong but don't know what to do,
Yes, there's no
hold
coordination. Yeah.
properly something.
Yeah. Absolutely. Because I've coached people, big guys, they come in, they have bulging muscles, and they're not coordinated at all. So
Correct.
they're not nearly as strong as they could be. Because I mean, yes, okay, they've done their bicep curls or their shrugs or whatever, they can pick up some pretty heavy weight, but they can't do much with it. Like you ask them to clean and jerk or to snatch or do a pull-up, things like this where it's like the strength really isn't there. It's just kind of a facade of strength because the muscles are toned, but they're not coordinated.
Yes, and also I think when you there are existing people, they practice a lot and they have nothing. There's nothing, so they are lucky or genes or whatever,
Yeah.
but most of the people have trouble one day in their musician life. But could it be now that when you tend to be not so good organized when you are practicing, it could be also when you are doing something for the strength of your muscles,
Yes.
this isn't not a completely different thing. So
Mm-mm.
you wire in more deeply your certain manner to be not so good organized,
Mhm.
only with stronger muscles, with sometimes helps, but doesn't solve the problem.
Yes. 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 And I think, that's that for me, like going back to my story, like that's why I felt like I was only managing pain. I was providing noise to my nervous system to to help just not feel the pain as much. And that noise, it just, was like putting on headphones, like la la la, I can't hear you, pain. Um and being a little bit stronger. I mean, you get a little bit coordinated, maybe in those kinds of fitness pursuits, but yeah, the coordination, like the Feldenkrais method, is really what brought that coordination for me. And in amazing ways, like through, at least before I got pregnant, in my training, every morning and then every evening during a segment, I would do a couple chin-ups, like on a bar in the garage, just, before I'd go. And then I come home and it was like this test. Like I would see, okay, what did it feel like this morning? And then we do, a bunch of ATMs, and then like, what would it feel like in the evening? And it was always so surprising to me to do ATMs that just, they don't relate at all, it seems like, to doing a chin up. And yet my chin ups would get better. Like, yeah, and it's going back to that idea that they weren't directly related, but it was helping coordinate my system better. And that's everything. It's huge.
Yes, and I think it's obvious that you like to work with musicians. And how do you do this? What are you offering?
So I have a program online, Perform Without Pain. And in this program, it's Feldenkrais lessons throughout. Right now, the program is 8 weeks. I'm toying with making it longer or changing the duration of it. But there's Feldenkrais lessons throughout. I think 3 lessons a week that are pre-recorded, and then they work with me one-on-one as well. So they get lessons through me. In individual sessions. And halfway through the program, then we start including or incorporating strength training. So kettlebells in this case. Actually, the exercises that are in the program, you don't even need weight for necessarily, or you don't even need a kettlebell necessarily for, just some kind of weight if you want that. And so then the Feldenkrais lessons that I'm selecting are helping to teach the movement patterns that are used in the strength training exercises. And so that's kind of the second half of the course. Is for a lot of musicians, strength training is very new. So I'm helping them throughout the duration of the course kind of change their mindset into more of a beginner's mind. Because I think that's a big piece of what we lack. Many of us musicians who have been playing for a really long time, we have our 10,000 hours under our belt or whatever. We kind of forget what it's like to be a beginner. And there's, everything that we've been talking about that comes with that. So showing them kind of how to be a beginner in their movement, and then actually teaching them something new, some kind of new pursuit like strength training, the beginnings of that, and then helping them take that back into their practice. So, what is it that you're learning from doing this new thing, and how can we incorporate that into your practice with the instrument you've been playing forever?
And they are more from the strings or also?
Yeah, typically strings. Actually, it's funny that the most of the people that have been through the program at this point actually aren't even musicians. I've had a firefighter go through it, and a gymnast, and other types of people. It's more for anybody, but musicians, like, because that's just where I'm coming from. That's always kind of been more my how do you say, like just the people I speak to more, from my own experience.
Hmm. And so that's very interesting when you have the I start again. What I know is sometimes it's so overwhelming what I learn in a group lesson or throughout a one-to-one lesson. It's not so easy to build the bridge directly to my practicing or my playing.
Mhm.
And do you have ideas how this could happen for some people? Or also, I heard some colleagues which said, "Oh, I like it." Uh, and also, I started once. Was it? I started a Feldenkrais training, but I was playing in an orchestra and also had to do some exams and everything. And she felt that in this moment in her life, the Feldenkrais method is very good, but will yes, the integration, the direct integration wasn't so it wasn't easy for her. And do you have some recommendations, or how do you deal with this? Maybe this came never up in your classes, but maybe you had it with yourself that.
Yeah, so because I have a couple thoughts about that. Well, for one, in my program, I actually there's at least one lesson a week that is meant to be done with your instrument. So, it's sitting in some way, and it's, learning to use the pelvis like while you're playing, or, some kind of idea like that. So, because I recognize that it is hard.
Yes. So I can spring it. So you take care of it, that this will not happen. So your program is built, you have the group lesson and this, but there is one lesson with you. And I think that is something what I missed in,
Mhm.
also, or maybe the other violinist. And I think it's okay because when you're in a regular Feldenkrais training, you are not in a special training for a musician.
Yeah.
They don't know where are you or what you are struggling, and then that's okay. But
Yeah.
your training, you take care that this will not happen. Oh,
Yeah, and I actually,
that's too um, unsafe, but you help to feel the bridge, to build the bridge, and to see the connection.
yeah, at least putting out the guideposts, because I try and keep those lessons short, because I want them to feel like they're lessons that they could do while they were sitting in an orchestra. Like, oh, I've done it myself, where I've had long sessions where, like, I'm playing, I'm holding up the instrument, it's early in the morning, I'm feeling something maybe not so great in my wrist or my shoulder, and then I can start to play with my pelvis, like, oh, what if I went this way with my pelvis instead of that way, or like, what am I actually doing right now? And then finding that whatever uncomfortableness I was experiencing tends to go away when I'm just starting to explore what other directions I can go, because I see it as more like musicians have a tendency to want to be told what to do. I think that's kind of why they like Alexander a little bit more than Feldenkrais. They want to just be told, like, here's my checklist of things, and then I'm good to go. But what I'm trying to help them do is spark the curiosity that, what, like, okay, how, if I've been introduced to this in like a certain way, then maybe I can start to explore other things on my own. And it's okay to explore other things on my own. Like, there is no doing it wrong necessarily. Like, doing it bad is another way of looking at it, and let's get away from that looking at it. But the other thing I was going to say, it is difficult when you are going into some kind of situation like playing in an orchestra, because there are some other, how do I put it, like, other systems at play, because you're kind of butting heads with, at that point, with, I hesitate to say it, but like capitalism. Like, we have to prepare this program at this certain time, and so we've got to get through all this repertoire, we've got to rehearse for these certain amounts of time, you're being paid, you get a 15-minute break just because the union tells us that you need a break. But other than that, it's like you're a machine within, you're a cog in the machine, and we got to go. So in those situations, it is incredibly hard to try and feel yourself because you've been trained to just put the blinders on and get the concert ready.
Yes, yes. But once I had a good um, that happened to me after an FI, functional integration, that I stood up and felt, okay, it's not so much. I talk about this in another podcast, so I don't want to bore other people which might know this story. But it was after this lesson I felt, okay, nice, but so what? It was okay. But
Yeah.
2 weeks later, I was really in a struggle. I have 3 children, they were crying around, everything was loud. I had to peel off the carrots. And in this very urgent situation, I had a flash inside. So I wasn't in an orchestra and there was
Yeah.
no, but I was by my own. Everything was like, wow. So, and then suddenly I had like a lightening through my arm and through everything. I was spaced with my feet and everything was, oh, that's it.
Wow.
2 weeks later at home, that's
Yeah.
it. Because
Yeah.
she was so smiley after that. Yes, you will see, you will see. And I was okay. Yeah, I feel good. And also, it was an FI in my training. The other people came out, what an amazing and a process. And I, yes, okay. But 2 weeks later, there was it. And it was in a situation. And when I was in the need of something. And you know, the children were really nice after this lightning through my arm. It was
Ooh.
me who felt it is loud, I'm in stress. The children were quite good,
Mhm.
hungry, but not so bad as I thought. So
Mhm.
in not a bad mood. So um, but this is so interesting, and I think this happens when you do more regular Feldenkrais and you build up uh, strategies which you are not so have so much in what we call more in the brain in the you can't tell about it but it's inside you and
Mhm.
that's the most interesting Feldenkrais process I think which is so hard to talk about or to give people trust to this we can talk about it you went through it
Yeah.
I have a bunch of examples for myself or with my students, but this is something what is not there at the beginning, but it is built in. Also, I had situation that I fell down my bicycle and
Mm.
how I rolled down and yes, my hands and wrists, I was doing everything throughout this to protect my hands. It was really funny, but it worked.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I feel like a lot of people like that kind of becomes a common thread in trainings is that you get these people coming in, like the students coming back after a segment or after a break and saying, "Oh my God, I had this accident or whatever where it didn't happen, like it didn't go the way they thought it was going to go because there's some kind of thing in their brain that they've learned they just didn't know it was there." Like I had my own where my son had been born. He was probably like 6 months old or so. I was walking down our stairs and our stairs were a little slippery and I had socks on and I had a glass in my hand and I slipped on the stairs holding him and this glass. Somehow I felt like I grew a third arm. Like I think he was holding on too. Like he knew to hang on like little monkey style. But yeah, like all I did was just sit down on my butt. Like it could have been so much worse going down the stairs, but it was completely surprising to me that like wow that could have been so much worse and somewhere in the depths of my brain I knew what to do to keep myself and him safe and the liquid in the glass like
Very important.
very
Yes. Okay. So that's um I have the feeling we can talk on and we will find new things. But in one point we have to stop.
yes.
But um
Wait.
yeah. But is there something you want to mm, to to talk about or what I didn't ask and you think it's so important to mention it?
Ah, I mean, I feel like this has been such a golden discussion. Like we've hit on so many points that I think are super important. Like just in being, like whether you're a musician or in fitness or just like existing in the world. Um, like going back to your peeling the carrot story, it's like Feldenkrais for me has helped me realize that a lot of these kinds of deadlines that I put on myself, like having to get the food cut up for the kid in a timely manner, like that they're not as pressing as you think they are. like, they'll be okay. Like, we can slow this down. That's okay. Like, they're kind of these arbitrary standards. Like, maybe I don't get the floor swept today, and that's okay. Um, but they're the cause of a lot of stress for people, myself included. There's some days you look around and you're like, oh my God, like, what would my mother think? Um, or whatever. But it's okay. Like, you're taking care of yourself, and then everything else will flow from that.
Yes, yes, I agree fully to this really. And so I think it's all not all said, but this is really important. I like to let it stay, and thank you that you gave your time to talk with me.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been wonderful talking with you.
Yes, it's my pleasure too. And yes, hopefully we meet again, and we will. We talk
Yes.
about something, and so. But for this, goodbye.
Thank you so much, Christina.